Can we quickly talk about capability versus capacity and what the differences are? This has been something I've been talking more and more with women on their health journey, with women building businesses, with women who are trying to manage different facets of their life. How do we really start to understand this concept of the differences between capability and capacity? So here's the thing I want to preface this with, because I think this is extremely important. We are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we limit ourselves with limiting beliefs, with things we say in our heads, with this concept of I'm not enough, or I never will be enough, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. We all have some level, most often, of a soundtrack that doesn't serve us. And so on the mindset side of things, it is always important to say, where am I holding myself hostage? Where am I limiting myself? What am I saying in my brain that I know is not serving me, and how do I release that? That is incredibly important to make sure that we are always reflecting on. At the same time, I want to be honest about, as humans, as women, as busy moms, as parents, as people working in the working world, as entrepreneurs, as whatever it is, insert your specific hat you have on in that moment, we all have a lot we're managing. And so our capacity can only go so far. No matter how capable we are, our capacity can only go so far. And here's what I've noticed in the conversations I've had, most recently with clients and other entrepreneurs and women that I've had the privilege of working alongside. So often what happens is when we start to reach our capacity and we know that we can do more, want to do more, need to do more, are driven to do more, we start to beat ourselves up when we can't make the time, find the time, figure it out on our own in the moment, whatever it is. We start to beat ourselves up right here mentally. Mentally, we start to beat ourselves up. I've done it in my own life. And the more I have these conversations, I'm realizing other women really do it in their lives too. We beat ourselves up, like hit that capacity line. And we feel like there's so much more we should be doing. There's so much more that I could be doing. There's so much more that I should be dedicating to. There's so many ways that I need to be pouring into these other things in my life. And the reality is we have a capacity. We all have a certain amount of time during the day. We only have so many hours that we can, and quite honestly should, put towards our work, our dreams, our things. At some point in time, there has to be this evaluation of your own personal health in the process. And that's what I'm passionate about. I vividly remember in the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, I had little to no boundaries. I worked day and night, every hour of every day of every moment. I overlapped with everything. I missed so many opportunities as far as like being able to have very intentional, focused time with my family. I tried to maximize my capacity by thinking that the more hours I worked and the more I was in my business, that it was going to lead to more success or more impact or more income or whatever the narrative that I was telling myself at the time. I thought that doing all the things and constantly working in order to prove that I had all this capacity was going to be the way to success. And it wasn't that way at all. It was the way to burnout. And so I've had to learn this very distinct understanding of just because I don't have the capacity in the day or in the month or in the week or whatever does not mean that I'm not capable. It just means I need to come up with a different strategic plan, whether that's outsourcing, whether that's shifting gears as far as timelines, whether that's figuring out what's realistic for me in my own body, in my own capacity, in some sort of reflective practice, no matter what it is. It's so important to remember that that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I shouldn't say that. It doesn't mean anything at all about our capability when we reach the lines of capacity. And so I want to kind of give some quick tips here, 3 quick tips. Like, what are 3 things that I want you to take away from this message? What is the biggest thing that I want you to understand about this concept of the differences between capability and capacity, and how when we don't have the capacity, we don't need to beat up our capabilities. We don't need to go after who we are and what we're about. That doesn't need to be the song and dance that we play. And I know in entrepreneurship, and especially in motherhood, that is a game we play all the time as women. We play that game all the time. When I don't have the capacity to work on my business and volunteer at art class and send a meal to a friend and call my grandma, and like, if I can't do all of that in one day, then all of a sudden I am not capable or I'm not enough, and all of the narratives. And we need to work against that. We need to be calling that to attention, and we need to be making sure that we're really working through the mindset components to that, because it doesn't serve us. It's not productive. So the first thing that I want to encourage you to do and give you is permission to pause. Ask yourself and say this to yourself. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. That's a big one related to boundaries. And that's something that we sort of have to embrace. It's not always easy to do that, but really asking yourself, like, is this all aligned with my priorities right now? And do I have the margin to sacrifice my well-being in order to push my capacity in this moment? Pausing and giving yourself permission to say, again, just because maybe I can doesn't mean I have to. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. I remember vividly saying this to myself as I was learning through my own burnout in the beginning. I used to share all the time about how I was working everywhere, and I was working on vacation. I was working on my phone. I was working in the line at Disney. I was working at lunch with a friend. I was like going overboard on explaining how I was working from anywhere. And don't get me wrong, there are blessings from being able to work from anywhere. But when you have no boundaries around that and you just push your capacity to the max and don't pause and don't ask about your priorities and don't like really question if this is sacrificing your personal well-being, it will lead you to burnout. It will lead you to burnout. And so I had to learn that lesson. I had to realize, like, just because I couldn't push my capacity, so to speak, didn't mean anything about my capability. And it wasn't even pushing my capacity. It was learning to have boundaries around my capacity. And so that kind of brings me to the next one, is having boundaries is not a weakness. It's a strength. And so capacity isn't just about time. It's also about your energy. It's also about your mental space. It's also about your emotional bandwidth. It's also about what helps you keep your health at the center of what you're doing. That is really what it is. So when we have boundaries in place, because we only have so much capacity, we need to be thinking about these different facets of our health. We need to be asking about stress. We need to be asking about, what am I saying yes to and why? We need to be asking ourselves those questions. And we need to be encouraging ourselves through this concept of understanding, again, that it has nothing to do with our capability. Setting boundaries and evaluating our capacity, that has nothing to do with our capabilities. The third is really stepping into understanding that when you create boundaries, when you are assessing your wellness alongside what you are managing in your day-to-day, you start to really honor this opportunity for sustainable growth. The opportunity to actually withstand what it is that you're showing up for in your day-to-day life. So when you start to actually figure out, what is my capacity, what can I manage, and what feels good in order to also protect my health, then you also figure out what are the ways that I can enlist other resources as needed, whether that's delegating and asking for help with different tasks, whether that's, finding other people to work with on something, whether that's figuring out, like, how do I understand what's going to be realistic for me in this particular season and what is actually going to be something that I can sustain. You have a better opportunity for growth, for living in this fulfilled energy, for showing up in the way that I know that you deserve and that you likely desire when you have these discussions with yourself, when you go into these mindset shifts and you go into this deeper dive on assessing capacity versus capability. I really want to make sure that we're talking through these 3 levels, because when we're not assessing our boundaries, when we're not pausing, when we're not really understanding how evaluating our capacity and how when we have better boundaries, that gives us a better opportunity for growth. If we're not doing those things, it's not going to be healthy for us. It's going to lead to extreme burnout. And I'm saying this because I've been there. I'm saying this because I've gone through it. And what bothers me the most sometimes in what women do in their wellness journey is they start to beat themselves up mentally when they just can't do it all. But here's the message today. You're not meant to do it all. You are not supposed to do it all. And most of all, you should not be trying to do it all and putting your health completely on the back burner and not addressing what it is that fills your cup and what you need in order to show up for your business, to show up for your family, to show up for your life. So please understand this. Capacity is finite to a degree. That has nothing to do with our capability. And for me, one of the things I've had to learn in my entrepreneurship journey specifically is I give myself permission to call out when I've hit my capacity. And when I do, I pray on it. I lean into faith. I trust the process. I trust the journey. I trust who I'm becoming along the way. I trust that where I'm being called to go will unfold in the timing it's meant to, in a way that keeps my wellness at the center. I want to encourage you with that message, because so often, especially when you're working on a dream or you're working hard for your family, or you really want to show up for your life in, a way that feels impactful and exciting and like you're serving everyone else, you can't do that when you burn out. You can't do that when you push your capacity to the max without boundaries. And so just remember that today, my friends. It's so important to understand that our capacity and our capability are different. And what you are capable of is beyond your wildest dreams. Don't ever forget that. Your capacity, you will have to continue to adjust and shift and change. You will have to figure out along the way how you might need to ask for help. But I want you to be reminded of this most of all. You are truly capable of whatever it is you set your mind to. And don't let specific situations or circumstances or capacity deter you from really understanding and believing that. Because you deserve all of the great things that you are focused on in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.